Hey guys, Colin here, and this week's record is Cheech and Chong, Las Cochinas. Um, this was released in 1973, and this is one of my comedy records. I actually have quite a few comedy records, and I haven't really shown any of them a lot, so I figured I'd throw one in here and there on my videos. And here's my first one on this little set of videos I'm doing of music and board games. Um, and this actually won a Grammy in 1973 for Best Comedy Recording. And it was also nominated for a Grammy for its cover art, which you can see here. It's kind of a die-cut cover here. And this pulls out, and you can see the inside of it, and you can see inside there, Cheech and Chong have some of their goodies kind of stuffed around inside the door. And on the back is a lot of scribblings of the contents of the record, the playlists and whatnot. And down here you can see it was released in 1973. And it has some pretty good records or recordings that I remember from when I was a kid, like Up His Nose. Pedro and Man at the Drive-In was always one of my favorites. And the Evelyn Wood Speed Reading Course, except on the record I think they say the Evelyn Wood Speed Reading Course or something along those lines. And it also has Basketball Jones. Now that's an old classic right there. I was first introduced to these guys by my uncle. I talk about him a lot in my videos. And he had one of their records, and I remember us listening to it all the time. And we would sit there and giggle and laugh and whatever was going on. And then later on, my mom took me to see Up in Smoke at the movie theaters. I was a kid, and she took me to a movie like that. We liked comedies. Actually, I went with her, and she had a date that night. And me and her were the only two in the whole theater giggling and laughing and having a good time watching Up in Smoke with Cheech and Chong. The boyfriend she had at the time was kind of a downer. And, he just kind of sat there and he didn't laugh, didn't say a word. I don't think he was really into the movie from what I remember. But I always remember that my mom taking me to see that movie, and she took me to a lot of stuff in those days. My first concerts, my first movies, and so did my uncle. Both of them were a big influence in my life on liking and listening to music, and also movies and comedy and that sort of stuff. And that's Cheech and Chong's Las Cochinas. Now, I have some trivia here, as usual, from 1973. Now, I've already shown, like, 3 other records from 1973, and sooner or later I'm going to start running out of trivia. But here's some stuff from 1973. The first cell phone call was made, and it was on a Motorola phone. The world's most isolated tree, which was in the Sahara Desert, hundreds of miles from anything, died when a drunk driver hit it in 1973. Can you imagine that? There's a drunk driver hundreds of miles out in the middle of nowhere, and he runs over the only living thing out there. So that just goes to show you, don't drink and drive. Jimmy Carter reported a UFO sighting. We recently had our own UFO sighting, and one of these days I might talk about that if you guys want to hear it. It was kind of exciting and shook us up a bit. And Sacheen Littlefeather accepted the Academy Award for Marlon Brando at The Godfather, for the Godfather movie. Now, he was sort of protesting the treatment of Native Americans and had her go up and accept his award. And later on, she appeared in Playboy magazine. I never knew that. Also, about that same time, the same Academy Awards in The Godfather, Al Pacino boycotted the Academy Awards because he felt that he should have been nominated for Best Actor because he had more screen time in that movie. I don't know about that. It is a good movie. I enjoyed Marlon Brando's performance, and yeah, I noticed on some of these Academy Awards, the awards that people should get for the movie that they do at the time, they don't get one, and then years down the line, there'll be some movie that probably wasn't as good, and they're nominated for, or they win the Academy Award for whatever movie. And I think Al Pacino won one for playing a blind gentleman. I forget the name of the movie. And a board game type trivia thing worth mentioning is that TSR was founded. And TSR is a company that releases or made board games, and they're still releasing stuff now. I don't know if it's still TSR, but there's still the Dungeons and Dragons thing on some games nowadays, and that was very popular back in the 70s, the Dungeons and Dragons, and that went on to kind of produce other card games and things that people are interested in. Like nowadays, it's Magic the Gathering, or the Magic game, I think it's called. Every week here, there's an event at our local game store where people go in and play Magic together, and that's kind of a cool thing because it gets people away from their cell phones and video games and television to kind of interact with each other. And that's kind of why I kind of like the board games. I like playing them with my girlfriend because it gets us together and we're talking, having fun, or sometimes not having fun if it's if we're having a hard time in a game that's kind of hard and things like that. And that brings me to a game that we played. In a game that I've also played solo. You can play this by yourself, and it's very fun. It's called Escape the Dark Castle, the game of atmospheric adventure. Now, this is a card and a dice game. I'll kind of read the back of it here a little bit to give you an idea of what the game might be about. And it says, after years of wrongful incarceration, you finally break free of your cell. Now you face danger at every turn on a desperate quest to escape. Escape the Dark Castle is a simple fantasy adventure game with a focus on atmosphere, storytelling, and player cooperation, perfect for newcomers to tabletop gaming. Players take the roles of prisoners and must work together using dice and item cards to overcome the castle's many horrors, traps, and challenges. Can you escape the dark? And this was released by, I believe the company is called Themeborn. It is a 1 to 4 player game, 14 and up. I believe the age is 14 and up because it's kind of a dark theme and there's some monsters in there that might scare small children. Now I've got some of the cards here just to kind of show you what some of them are. This is one of the characters you can play. This is the cook. I love the artwork in these. They kind of takes you back to like the Castlevania type video game days of, or even Dungeons and Dragon days of the 70s. And this is one of the cook, one of the players who's trying to escape the castle. And in this game, you or two of you or four of you are trying to escape the castle together. So if one of you doesn't make it, then you all lose. And our first time playing this, we actually won the game, and we was really excited. And it was kind of one of our first times just learning the game. So we weren't sure we were playing it just right, but we won, and we were excited. And now we're kind of getting a better handle on the rules and things. Now, the first card you see in this is Turn Over to Begin. It's almost like a book. You're turning over these cards to read an old ancient manuscript from the castle days or whatever. And also these cards are quite large and easy to read. And on the other side is where your adventure begins. There's an old chest there with the broken lock on it, and it says, after years of incarceration in the depths of the dark castle, you finally break free of your cell. In a small stone room adjoining the cell block stands an old wooden chest. The lock is open. You open it, and it gives you two little cards like this, which you can use throughout the game. This one is to gain back some life. When you would take damage, discard to avoid the damage, and that's an effervescent evasion. And that's just one of the cards. There's a whole bunch of them. And here's a couple of the characters you might encounter in here. Here's a guy throwing around some chains here. It says, as you pass a heavy wooden door, it flies open and a ragged madman bursts through. He wields his shackles as a weapon, and his crazed stare sends a clear message. You stand between him and freedom. And then you roll some dice. It's got a bunch of dice with it like this. There's your own, the monsters, or the crazy guy's dice that's in the game. And then the cook gets her own dice right here with different images on each side, and you kind of follow what it says in this corner here with the dice that you need, and you take your roll like that and see if you beat the guy trying to whip you with his chains or whatever, basically a crazy prisoner who's been stuck in there for who knows how long. And at the end, if you go through like 15 of these cards, at the end there's a boss type monster, and it's the door. You enter this door. You're almost to the end of the castle, and it says, "Do not read until you have completed the last chapter card. This is it. You have reached the final challenge. One less obstacle stands between you and freedom." And that this one happens to be the dark one, and as you can tell, he looks pretty dark. not somebody you'd want to run into in a dark alley or room or a castle in this instance. And it says, your pitiful trinkets are no match for my dark magic. And then you got to battle him with a whole bunch of dice down here. You or whoever you're playing with. And that's kind of a really fast description of the game. Any of these games that I show, like I mentioned before, you can look up on YouTube or just on the internet itself and get a better description or watch somebody playing it. And that's Escape Dark Castle. Colin, over and out, and Weirdos Unite.